Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our latest version of the West webinar series. This is presented by FireTech-U. So FireTech-U, the goal and purpose is to bring education to the fire service on technology specifically. Now, I think we would all agree there's varying levels of maturity when it comes to technology. And I can tell you, after 31-year career and 15 years as a fire chief, I had to navigate through that various maturity level and understanding technology and not only just the purchase of it, but why and why the data is important. How do we get the right data? And really, that's what today's going to be about is a little bit about data collection, data analysis. And certainly, you all are aware of the change from NFIRS to NERIS, spearheaded by Dr. Laurie, who was our U.S. Fire Administrator and had this great vision of modernizing the reporting we do in the fire service. So it's a real honor today for me to have on two individuals who are going to cover not only where we're at today with NERIS, but where we're going. And I think that's really important because NERIS is not just a platform where you submit data to, response data, et cetera. It's truly going to become a platform where you can get back insight to help your fire departments be better. And so I do want to introduce Bailey Scott and Craig Weincheck. Really appreciate both of you being on today to talk about NERIS. There's been a lot of questions as we travel around and engage our states in the West. Whole lot of questions about everything from I'm having trouble getting in, and I'm sure you guys are going to cover that a little bit, to what's the future of NERIS? Is it going to become NFIRS 2.0, or is it really going to be the new modernized platform that helps the fire service advance? Certainly, we've had a lot of conversations in the work we're doing, even with our data exchange and how those two correlate and talk. So really blessed to have you guys on today. Thanks, Joanna Zibel, who is our Director of Technology Advancement, for helping to arrange this as well, and for our staff who helped set up the webinar. So with that, Bailey, Craig, I'm going to turn it over to you guys and get off camera because you're the smart ones in the room that are going to help inform us where we're going next. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having us. For those that don't know me, my name is Craig Weincheck. I'm a director of research here at UL Research Institute's Fire Safety Research Institute, which is quite the long organizational name. Most folks know us as either UL or FSRI. And I've had the pleasure to lead the team from the FSRI side on NERIS for the last 3 years. And so I'll give a brief introduction and then turn it over to my colleague Bailey Scott, who will kind of lead you through all the fun stuff that we're doing from analytics and data visualization and where we're going with kind of the next kind of 3, 6, 9 months of development here at NERIS. So I think I have control. We'll see if this works. Yep. So doesn't want to advance. There we go. So we kind of broke it down into 4 main sections. So I'll start with a little bit of a refresher, kind of level set of where we were going, so that we can kind of know where we are today in terms of the system and everything that's happening. Then I'll turn it over to Bailey, who will walk through kind of how we onboarded through 2025, and also if you're not in, if you have questions, some slides and some QR codes and things to help make sure that you're squared away there. And then probably the most exciting piece is number 3, our analytics overview is the tools that are currently live. We'll give you a couple snapshots of where we're going. There's some new stuff on the horizon that's due to be out pretty soon, and then where we're going with some of this stuff over the next several months. So let's level set a little bit. We kicked this project off in May of 2023 is when FSRI was awarded the contract, and we've been working with the United States Fire Administration and the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate kind of in lockstep ever since. So the partnership between those 2 government agencies has been fantastic, especially at the National Fire Data Center over at USFA. So we kicked this off in May. We had the task of, do we build NFIRS 6.0 as kind of Chief alluded to, or do we start from scratch with our schemas, and what can we do differently with a modern database and modern tools? And so we were told, hey, don't build NFIRS 6.0, build something that works in the modern stack. And so we put together that initial schema, got it out for national engagement at the end of 2023. So from December through January of 24, we had about 1,600 comments. There's that phrase, never read the comments. Well, when you get 1,600 of them and your job is to read them and make sure you're addressing them, there's a lot. I can say confidently that the system's better because of that feedback. Some of those comments were a little out there. Some might not have even applied to NERIS at all. But the ones that came in, I think we represented all 50 states, from local levels to small volunteers through large career departments, other federal agencies. So everyone kind of came together and provided us some really good feedback. We took that feedback, incorporated it, and had a prototype up for testing in March of 24, where we had 6 departments from some large departments such as Orange County Fire Authority on the West Coast and Fairfax on the East Coast, and folks in between to start to test and use the system and basically give it to firefighters, let them break it, and let's fix it. And so that ran for a couple of months. And then in August of 24, we added another 50 departments to get us to 56, where we had more and more folks kind of continue to use the system and test it. The exciting part was the willingness to participate, because this was all double entry. This data was not going anywhere. It was going to a test environment. It was purely to understand the schemas, to understand the changes, and to provide feedback. So when we launched version 1 in November of 2024, we were putting out the best product we could. And by November, we had about 170 departments in the system. And I'll say this pretty confidently too. People ask, are we perfect? Absolutely not. I'd say the entire team knows that we've still got work to do. There's some gaps in our schemas we're going to be fixing. There's some kind of perpetual state of improvement. As much as we try to get everyone's feedback and get all the incorporation early, there's only so much you can do until you get, all 30,000 fire departments in the system using it every day, and you realize you have some gaps. And so we're working to fix those as well. So then when we got into 2025, the cool part is the first record that came into the system came in January 2nd of 2025, from Pierre, rural South Dakota, from Chief Hinkle, who's now the fire marshal for the state of South Dakota as well, which is really exciting. It was a corn sack fire, which is also, if you ever get that trivia question, that's your answer. So for about 24 hours, we had a huge corn sack problem, statistically speaking, in the database at least. And throughout 2025, particularly starting in May of 2025, we started our FEMA region onboarding. So we ramped up from a few hundred departments to move all 30,000 in kind of a 5-month window. So that was quite the undertaking, and working with all the respective states and state organizations and chiefs associations to try to get invites in front of everyone that we could. As departments transitioned through October, we hit our first million records on December 21st, and it took us about another 23 days to get to 2 million. So the ramp up was significant. These days, I think in the month of May, we're averaging around 91,000 incidents submitted every day that are being processed and available for consumption throughout the country. So that's really exciting. The participation, the movement. Part of it is, grants and other things force some of this participation, but also the fact that people are submitting and participating is fantastic. What we'll learn from this data to give back, and Bailey will talk some of that later, is tremendous. When we transitioned between December and January, that was kind of the hard cutover. We went from about 5,000 departments or so reporting in December 25 to about 12,000 at the end of January. So quite a big ramp up in the month of January. And then right now, I think of the 38 most populated cities, I think 27 or 28 are reporting. So there's still a couple large departments still on our kind of nag list, so to speak, that we're working to get them to transition. But the really cool part is I think we're just under 19,000 departments reporting, and I'd estimate somewhere around that's probably representing about 80% of the call volume. So still a tremendous amount of work ahead of us, and that's part of our call to action today is if you're not in the system, we want to make sure you're in. If you're not reporting, we want to make sure your data starts to enter the NERIS ecosystem. And so how do we operate? I think this is one of the big questions that we get often when you think about Well, the legacy system kind of stalled, right? The last major release was 1999. The minor release 5.3 came out in 2014, and then it was kind of stagnant for a little while, right? And so we don't want to do that. And so the way we operate is on a kind of modern software development cycle. I say agile-ish here, so we don't have a strict adherence to this, but we try very hard to follow the kind of the best practices of an agile development. So our sprints last 2 weeks. They start every Tuesday or every other Tuesday, and they wrap up the following Monday. That Monday coincides with the deployment to production. Sometimes those deployments are back end improvements that no one ever notices. Sometimes they're front end features, so fixing user bugs, adding new features, adding new functionality, new dashboards, new tools, new ways to interact with the data, new training videos, you name it. We're kind of in a constant state of improvement and deployment kind of on these 2 week cycles. So if you open tickets and say, hey, this is broken, sometimes it could be a couple days if you're at the end of the sprint and we can get the fix in before the next prod deployment. Sometimes it's a hot fix where we need to deploy because it's a critical piece, and then you might see those fixes come kind of within hours sometimes, or as few as a few days. Or if you start at the front of the sprint, sometimes you might not see those changes for 2 weeks. So wanted to give you guys some insight in terms of how we operate here on NERIS. So when you make those requests in the help desk, or when you start to see our timeline, why we work on kind of these incremental levels. And I think the other piece that I want to highlight is kind of the larger ecosystem change between how we used to operate in the NFIRS system versus what we changed fundamentally in NERIS. And so I think most of y'all are familiar with this workflow. Is you have an emergency response, you're going to log it either sometimes in direct entry or within your records management system. You let those records accumulate. It might be 2 weeks, it might be a month, it might even be a quarter. They all pile up, they aggregate at the fire department level, and then you're either going to submit them to your state fire marshal. So you're going to do an NFIRS export. You're going to get the zip file that you email out. That zip file contained a ton of PII in it, often just as a unencrypted email being sent around the internet. Or you might directly upload in the FTP server at USFA for the NFIRS site. And then you would do this, and you would continue to do this every month or every 2 weeks or whatever your reporting cycle was. And then eventually NFIRS would be able to aggregate this at the kind of end of year. So it would take about a year to process all that data because of the lag associated with all the individual submissions. And then there'd be kind of a public data release and maybe some highlight statistics about the previous 2 year window of analytics. But it was very linear in the workflow, is that you'd submit and then you really didn't get anything back right at the local level. The state fire marshals used that data to inform policy, and it was really, really great piece of aggregation at the state level, and then same thing at the United States Fire Administration level. But the local level never really kind of hooked back around to y'all. And so we wanted to change that as kind of putting the fire department first in NERIS. There's still the absolute flows to the state fire marshal's office and United States Fire Administration. Now, when you submit a record into our system, as soon as that record is processed, it's available both at the state and the United States Fire Administration level. So we're moving that lag. And then really cycling back with the analytics piece to y'all. So getting that feedback, getting those data visualizations, getting those tools and insights, because we can build for one department and provide it for all 30,000. We also have tasking to enrich the data. So any record that gets submitted to NERIS gets automatically enriched with weather information like temperature, pressure, wind speed, precipitation, allergens, air quality index. We're adding parcel information, so age of parcel, size of parcel, assessed land value, assessed property value, where we have it, the age of the building, the number of stories, the occupational use type. So all the things that you've been tasked to have to do manually, we're working to enrich that so that data comes back to you at the department level, but it also feeds directly to the states and to the United States Fire Administration. So we can leverage the modern stack to improve our workflows, to minimize the burden on y'all. You shouldn't have to be entering weather data on every call, but the value of knowing weather on calls is tremendous from a predictive piece, from a resource allocation piece. So we want to make sure that we're putting that data back in your hands at the end of the day. think I went too far. And then just a little snapshot of where we are. We're just under 19,000 departments reporting, so about 62% or so, which is really exciting. We just crossed 15 million records the other day, so we're again, as we're processing around 90,000 plus incidents a day. I think the peak day we've had is about 117,000. We typically have spikes on Mondays, as the record approvals over the weekend tend to slow down for departments, and they'll come back on shift on Monday and then approve a lot of these records to get submit automatically from the records management system to our API. I think that the really cool part is when we looked at our data at the 10 million and 15 million mark, just around 60% of all calls are arriving to NERIS within 24 hours of the 911 call. And that's fantastic. I mean, that's an incredible change in how we talk about data for the fire service. Is now we're giving folks that can act on that data in a timely manner. So from your state fire marshals to your county coordinators to again, the federal agencies, and then even NERIS itself to give it back to y'all in different forms. That timeliness is impactful. That we're not waiting a year to see what we did the previous year. We're now waiting, hours, which is, I think, a tremendous improvement and a tremendous thank you to everyone who's submitting those records in a timely fashion, right? All of this is built on the participation and the commitment from the United States Fire Service to say, hey, we're going to do this. Let's go all in. And then it's on our side, right, from the NERIS team and our partners, at the federal level to make it happen, to deliver something that is of value to y'all. So a big thank you to everyone who is submitting, and it's our job to hold up the other end of the bargain. So from here, I'm going to pass it over to Bailey, who will kind of walk through the onboarding piece and then dive into all the fun analytics that we've been building.
Yeah, and I'm going to pause after we get through this section, and then we'll answer some of the questions that have come in because I've seen them come in through the chat. So we'll answer those after the onboarding before we hop into the more technical piece. But my name is Bailey Scott. I am a research scientist at UL's Fire Safety Research Institute. I've been here about a year and a few months now, and I came from Esri, but prior to that was with the State Fire Marshal's Office here in Tennessee. So came from that angle, which leads me into our statewide onboarding. So my first sort of role with coming to FSRI was helping with the statewide onboarding. And I know in the part of the country that the Western Chiefs Association occupies, the way that state government interacts with local fire departments varies vastly by state, probably more so state to state than any other region of the US. And so I'm going to cover some things today that if you haven't onboarded or haven't started reporting, or if your neighbor hasn't started onboarding or reporting, maybe this will help guide you. So, all right, so there's two phases to the onboarding process. If you've been through this, you know this. One is getting set up within the system and creating your account. The second is starting to report. We have several that have done this part and created their account, but have not started pushing data to the system yet, either because they don't know their RMS is not hooked up via the API, or because they aren't sure what all of this means. And that both of those are valid. We can help through either of those problems. So if you can't log in, first step is to try resetting your password. You may have been sent credentials from the state. The state provided us with the contacts for every department. Again, the Rolodex of departments varied vastly by state. So that depending on what state you're in, the level of contact with that, or the level of quality of the contact may have varied in terms of the how new it was. We had a lot of old chiefs submitted from some states who were working on getting all of those refreshed. If anyone in your department has access to NERIS, they can actually add you. So any admin within a department can do user management within your department's NERIS node. But if no one in your department has access to NERIS, you can submit a help desk ticket. And I will preface this too by saying there's going to be a lot of QR codes in this. I'll send this PowerPoint to Joanna at the end of this to be distributed out. So if you have any questions or need reference back to any of the links, those will be hyperlinked within the presentation. And then if you aren't reporting, here is how to do that. So how to get your vendor's ID, client ID, to be put into NERIS and where to put it, that is there. If they are enrolled and you're still not seeing data displayed in NERIS, that is when it's probably time to reach back out to your vendor partner and make sure that they can help through triage in that. You can also put in a help desk ticket if you have any questions about that process. All right. Craig, are there any questions in the chat before we dive into the more technical part that needs to be covered verbally?
I got it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I know that this is a more technical group. We're going to dive into some tech stack stuff here. If you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat as we go, and Craig will cover those as well. So where we were with tech, with analytics stuff, if you logged in a while ago, you probably saw an Elastic dashboard, and I'll show a picture of it here in a second. But basically, that was just pulling from our PostgreSQL server and via the API and going into Elastic. This is what that looked like. It worked really well at the beginning, parsing this data out to 31 to 32,000 entities, which is how many we have when we add our federal partners, our states, our tribal agencies, all the list of partners that we have. Really was taxing on Elastic, and it made refreshing and indexing a little bit of a problem, and the data was not as snappy as we wanted it to be. So we went from this Elastic-based situation to a Dash and Plotly and ArcGIS modernized system. So Elastic is still there. If you log in, you'll see an Insights tab. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. But we're in the process of moving some stuff over and really modernizing our tech stack in terms of what we're doing. So right now we have data being pulled out of the system into a separate analytics database. Analytics database is used in two places, one in ArcGIS Online, and then the other one is being used to surface analytics within NERIS behind a login using Plotly Dash. Eventually that Elastic will go away, and you will just be left with several Plotly dashboards and then a series of public releases into ArcGIS Online. So we are in the process of phasing that Insights tab out. It has already actually been phased out for some of the state partners. They had a separate version of these dashboards. We've phased some of those out in favor of some others within Plotly. So if you see that go away, it's because we're adding other things in other places. So don't worry, you're still going to get the data. We make sure that there's parity for the data elements that are being provided in Elastic before removing that. This is what the Plotly dashboard looks like, and I've seen some folks already putting in some comments about the dashboard. This is version 1 of this. We are making improvements to it continuously, and then there will be other versions of this dashboard. So we call this one Incident Basics. It's just your overview information for your fire department. As we continue to iterate on this, we're going to pull out some things. I was talking to Craig yesterday about a fire-based dashboard that pulls in incident analysis fire data with fire from the incident report and sort of marries them together so you have that investigative report with the incident report. So that'll be one of our dashboards that is eventually coming out. We also have a unit utilization one that I'm going to show a preview of here in just a few minutes. That is really exciting as well, especially at the local level. And then where we're going, we are phasing out of DMS. So if you notice a refresh lag on some of our analytic products, we're aware of that. We are in the process of moving to a different software to sort of maintain that. Essentially what's happening is records are coming in so fast, the database can't keep up with those as they're going. And we want to make sure that that data is as fast as possible and getting into the right places to make decisions as quickly as possible. So we're moving to Estuary, and then we're also moving to Snowflake as an analytics engine for our database, specifically for analytics. That will help power both ArcGIS Online and Dash. Luckily, there's a Snowflake plugin for ArcGIS too, so the data getting streamed into ArcGIS Online will be much faster and simpler as well. And then this enables things like this. So that data getting into those places quickly and in a seamless manner allows us to lower the refresh rate on some of this. So your incident dashboard right now has about a 4-hour refresh. We're trying to get that much smaller so that the data is as fresh as possible. And then same thing with the utilization dashboard, making sure that we're updating that data as quickly as we can. And then a few other tools. So if you're using NERIS data at the API level, I wanted to mention that you can create an integration. Joanna, who's on here and was with Boise, as many of you know, did that before she left there actually. So they were pulling data down from the API directly and into a local database to be used in other analytic products. You can absolutely do that and leverage it to build your own queries and your own workflows. We also have a series of Python scripts in a public repo. I'm constantly building this out. I've been working on it this morning, actually. So there's a QR code there. There is one, as you can see on the screen, that has an AFG report out for NERIS data. So I know that that deadline is coming up swiftly. That data is in there. It actually hits the ArcGIS Online feature services for NFIRS, pulls back both NFIRS and NERIS data. I'm waiting on them to publish the 2025 data. They tell me it should be within the next day or two. Once that's done, I'll update that script to also pull the 2025 NFIRS data into that report as well. So it'll give you copies of both, put in the format that AFG is asking for that incident data. And then NERIS Public, we've talked a little bit about ArcGIS Online already, but the goal is to get published data sets into ArcGIS Online so that they can be used within existing dashboards and be used as the base for new dashboards and data visualization products. Right now we have NERIS Public Fire Departments, which was released in December of 2025. That gives all the boundaries for every fire department in the country, every headquarters location, and all the stations. We are constantly updating the GIS boundaries as well for all of the states. Some states have statewide layers, which makes it a little bit easier for us to make some mass updates like that. For example, Massachusetts had that and Connecticut. So you can see Massachusetts, the difference between the two states, between Connecticut and Mass. We've got Massachusetts already updated, and then Connecticut we're working on there. So, but this is public. You can access it now. You can pull it into existing ArcGIS products if you desire to. And then NERIS Public Incident Basics, which you can basically think of as almost a copy of that Plotly dashboard data into a feature service that's point-based and polygon-based in ArcGIS Online. That is coming later this summer. And then a series of strategic targeted data sets will follow. What that means is things like emerging hazards. So where are the emerging hazards happening? Things like batteries, medical oxygen, CSST, where are those occurrences occurring? And then we'll do one based on incident type as well. So where are the fires? Where are the EMS calls? Where are the multidiscipline calls? How are those occurring and where? And then give you targeted data sets to be able to use those within targeted products. So if you want a fire-based dashboard, you have that without having to dig through the NERIS public data, which obviously will be very large. And then I'm going to pause for a demo. Craig, are there any questions that need to be answered verbally? See him answering, so I'm assuming that.
I think we're good for now.
Okay, cool. Okay, switching screens into NERIS. So this is a department page. So if you go to your department page and then click analytics, you will see that there are the dashboards. I wanted to show where this is because I know some folks, maybe you set up your NERIS node initially when you were getting onboarded and we didn't have some of these analytics and you've been using your RMS. I wanted to show this just where this is in case. So this is your incident data. If you ever want to know when it was last refreshed, speaking of refreshes, you can hover over this little information thing and it'll tell you. And then it gives all your data. So you can filter this down and it will filter live. So if I want to filter to fires, for example, which I'll zoom in on this map, you can see where all the fires occurred. This, by the way, is my dad's fire department, so I have explicit permission to use their data and share it. So I'm not sharing anybody's anybody's data without permission. This also has the total number of fires they have, and then this incidents by call date. I want to zoom out a little bit and show this calls over time. So we were hit with a pretty bad ice storm here in Nashville at the beginning of the year. This right here is that ice storm. So if I drag that, I can see when the increase in calls were, what types of calls. Of course, a lot of injuries and illnesses, but a lot of citizen assists with lift assists as well during that time for people who had fallen and hurt themselves during the ice storm. So you can see too how mutual aid worked then. So in support of and in lieu of, and then support aid given as well. And then any fatalities that occurred. This is actually a motor vehicle accident fatality that they were able to extricate, and the individual passed away. So that is also available within this dashboard. And then you can just clear filters out, and it'll clear your date filter back to where you can see everything. You can also see over days and time how your call volume is changing and how different things are impacted by that. So if you want to see when hot times for fire, no pun intended, are, you can see that as well. So Saturdays, midday, they have a unusual spike in fire calls for some reason. So this is, again, in the analytics tab. Pretty soon, we're going to have more. I'm going to show another one. This analytics tab will eventually have little photos that you can use and click that will get you into each of the different dashboards. So there'll be multiple of them. You'll be able to toggle in and out of the different data visualization products. Speaking of new dashboards, this is the new unit response dashboard that is coming soon. It will probably not look exactly like this because I've seen some feedback going over to Holly, who's building this as we've been on this call. So this, again, is the same fire department. You can see their number of unit responses. And this map here shows where that apparatus originated and then where it went. It does not show AVL data. This is just where it says it's located within NERIS, what station it belongs to, and then where it was actually deployed as a resource. The colors on this show response time. So this red call here, this red arc, is actually a higher than average response. So if I wanted to select those out, I can. If I go up here to this, I'm going to actually show this big. You can see how your apparatus are responding together. So if engine 3, anything in the middle of these charts, it's going to be anything with the most relationships. So engine 3 is the one called upon most by the most number of things, whereas engine 2 basically runs with med 2 and then occasionally with med 3. Our goal here is to be able to understand when you're not running with someone that you normally run with. So let's say med 2 is out of service and they're needing to run with med 3. How is response time impacted by that? And what does it mean for unit utilization? And then we also have the response time by incident discipline and then the mode of response. So whether it was emergent, non-emergent, or unknown. Down here at the bottom, we have a list of every unit, the response counts, number of times they were unable to dispatch, and then the average response time and the 90th percentile response time by unit. This is also impacted by the filters at the top. So if you want to see just for fires what units, what the unit response time is, or just EMS what the medical unit response times are, you can filter that down and it will interact with this dashboard. And then at the bottom is a unit utilization and a travel time distribution chart. So you can see here what high load apparatus they have, and then what travel time distribution they have in terms of this current 30 days and the prior 30 days to that. So how things are changing over time. I wanted to show this as well. This is the toolbox that I mentioned earlier. So if you were able to grab that QR code, if not, Craig may be able to put it in the chat. But this is a public repo where we put some different Python scripts. You actually credential into these scripts just like you do within NERIS. So if you're in NERIS, you can access data within that. There's a fire department's one that gives you things like that AFG report, a full incident pool. So if you want to pull all your incidents out via the API, you can do that. And then this is a yearly summary, including multiple discipline responses. So if you want to see how many multi-discipline responses you have in comparison to the whole and how all of that breaks down, this is a good report to run. And finally, the NERIS Public Fire Department's data set. This again is in ArcGIS Online. You should be able to just search within AGO to see nearest public fire departments or any part of that word, and it should appear. This will show you all of the point-based data within that, so everything that's included in the points, everything that's included in the stations, and then the jurisdictions. And you can grab this and put it in whatever map or app that you're building or using. All right, I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint. Okay, and then a little bit of a look ahead. This is with the secondary schemas. So there are 3 of them: incident analysis, community risk reduction, and health and safety. Incident analysis was released on June 1st, the API was. Our RMS partners were sent the schemas for this, the finalized schemas and API endpoints back in end of March or early April. It's been about 2.5, 3 months ago at this point. They are all, I think, especially the big ones, building to that schema. And if you have questions about when it'll be available to be reported to within that, I encourage you to reach out to them and ask. We do not have final dates on their production or anything like that, but this does include things like final origin and cause determination, outdoor fire specifics, things like property and contents loss and dollar amount, consumer product tracking. So if a heater or an electrical device caused the incident, you can track that. And then it also includes vehicle specifics. We actually hit the VIN database and pull back the vehicle's information if it has a VIN. So that's pre-populated within there as well. CRR is the next one. So this one we're targeting late summer of 26. This is one standard place for logging community risk reduction. In NFIRS, it was an incident, so we were mixing reactive with proactive things. So I'm sure many people on this call probably documented smoke alarms or had their firefighters document smoke alarms as an NFIRS incident. We are separating the 2 things out. So proactive mitigation will have its own place, including inspections, events, home visits, and parcel-based inspections like wildfire inspections on properties. I know Colorado has a really robust system for outdoor home safety visits, so those will be included in there as well. The goal of this is to use the data to inform incident data to inform mitigation, but also mitigation data to inform incident response. So being able to use those 2 things bilaterally and in cooperation with each other is going to be critical and really exciting. And then firefighter health and safety. So this is firefighter injury and casualty tracking and streamlining information without the need of compromising PII within NERIS. So this we're targeting late 2026, and Craig's been working really hard to with NIOSH and the National Cancer Registry to get firefighter identification numbers synced so that we're able to track firefighters without exposing any of their personal information. Again, we just saw some of the public data sets that we're putting out. We want to ensure that none of that is compromised. If an incident doesn't go the way the public thinks it does, and then the firefighters' names are exposed, that's a huge risk. So we're making sure to not expose anybody, but also want to enable the local governments to be able to track that for cancer presumption and the like. And finally, the national engagement periods. We had a national engagement period earlier this year. We took in 146 entries during that month-long period. We are going to make some non-breaking updates to the schema in fall. What that means, we have 2 types of updates that are made: breaking changes and then non-breaking changes to the API. A breaking change has not been made since November of 2024. So we have not made anything that has broken the RMS's ability to send us a valid payload for an incident, for example, is what that means. So we will make non-breaking changes in the fall. What that will look like is things like an increased number of incident types. So any value sets we can add to an existing thing. We just did that with the World Cup. I know a few of you in California or Washington have probably gotten information from the state about that. There's now a World Cup special incident modifier included that was added about a month ago to the API. So that was a quick fix. It was non-breaking. We were able to add that and start collecting data to see how big events like that impact the fire service's ability to respond and the response times on just their normal load. But in addition, what does that actually mean in terms of the number of people that are being impacted by the fire department? So working to be able to tell your all's story better at the local level. And then a full version 2 is planned for early 2027. This is where the breaking changes will come in. So if new questions or fields need to be added that are required, that will happen then. I've been telling people this, I wouldn't expect like a whole new schema. I do expect that there will be some screws tightened in terms of requirements and validations and some new inputs, but the overall schema I don't expect, and I think Craig will probably echo that, to change all that much. It won't look like a whole new form for firefighters or anything. No reason to retrain or anything like that on the schema. And that's it. I will transition over to stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat.
Awesome. Bailey and Craig, thank you very much for joining us. I think, Craig, I was watching, you kept up with all the chat questions, I believe. I don't think we have any outstanding ones, so that's good. So if you have additional chats, just pop them in. We'll follow up on that. Really quick, I do want to introduce Joanna Zibble. She's on as a panelist as well. Joanna, as Bailey alluded to, was at Boise Fire with me, and then I was able to bring her over to the Western. She is our Director of Technology Advancement. So I want to just talk briefly about TechU. This whole webinar is brought to you by TechU. This is a program that the Western launched under a grant from Google, and we're going to continue this program. We believe in it so much on sharing technology answers to the fire service. I think as we travel around, and I know as a fire chief, I was certainly in that boat. I thought I was really savvy in technology until I started talking to real smart people, and I realized I'm kind of dumb when it comes to technology. And I think the goal is to bring continued education to the Western Fire Service and, quite honestly, the nation. So I just want to share real quick a place where you can go if you want to follow TechU and follow the advancements and the work we're doing, including these webinars and other tools. This is our website, and I just want to send you to TechU real quick. Fire Tech University. If you have any questions about the work we're doing on technology or what we're trying to bring to our members in the Western Fire Service, it's a great place to go to. You can see the events we have happening. We're going to have regular events. We also are going to be launching, probably in the next few months, a free tool to fire departments in the West that just analyzes your tech maturity in your organization. It gives you a really good awareness to how advanced and mature are we. It's not just about data collection. It's about how are you analyzing that? What are your relationships within your technology stack? And how are they talking and working with one another? So a lot of really good opportunities coming your way on TechU. So if you're interested about that, please go to the website. Everything's free. We don't charge right now for any of this. This is all just part of our membership-driven approach. So Bailey, Craig, can't thank you enough. We love the partnership we have with FSRI and the work you all are doing. It's good to see where you're going next. And then for all of you, as I travel around the West, I still have departments. Bailey, you and I talked about this. Still some departments challenged with getting into NERIS. So if you have challenges like that, reach out to Bailey, reach out to Craig. If you don't know how to get a hold of them, get a hold of us. We're certainly here to help you out to make sure that you're getting into NERIS. There is the grant connection, right? There's all those connections, but more importantly, they're really bringing some great tools to you. And this is not NFIRS 2.0. I'm so glad to hear that. We were all exhausted with the old NFIRS database. We just weren't getting the answers we were looking for. So thanks to all the work you're doing. And again, I hope you all have a really great day, and thanks for joining us on this webinar. Appreciate it.
Thank you.